Up
Microsoft at
next.
E3. Well, Xbox at E3, really. Um,
Yeah. Well,
either way,
the
Xbox.
in the broadest sense of the term Xbox. Yes. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
Xbox had their E3 press conference uh, on Sunday, last Sunday, and in that they had their Xbox Bethesda showcase, and it was their chance to show like what the future of Xbox looked like. Um, and they got off to a start. So
A start.
it is a start. What was your general? I mean, you watched the whole thing, right?
I did watch. I watched it at 1.5x, but I did watch the whole thing. Um,
What what
I
what was your impression on it?
There were a handful of games where I was like, "This looks great." There were a handful of games where I was like, "It is awesome to see those come to Xbox." For instance, Hades, Diablo 2, the um, sorry, Diablo 2 Resurrected, and a few of the other third party game like Among Us. Awesome. That's going to be great for Xbox players. Um, there were a couple of games where I was like, what is that? I want to play it. For instance, Eiyuden Chronicles, which, as far as we know, is not exclusive at all. But man, for me, aesthetically, that game hit me right in the feels or right in the where it counts because I enjoyed the heck out of Octopath Traveler, and it is like basically homage plus plus for that game. But they've done a bunch of things that were overall like nice. This is good stuff. There were a couple things in there that were very questionable. I watched it and I was like, in some cases, like with Starfield, why would you show that? Um, and in other cases with like Halo Infinite, we keep ragging on Halo Infinite, but the single player campaign teaser they showed was not real gameplay footage, as far as we know. It looked like at least a cutscene. And then the multiplayer, oh boy, you know, they did. You and I did a teardown of some of the video footage from their original announcement, and we were like frame by framing it and going like, there are some basic problems, very basic problems with this video. That's crazy that they used it. Uh, and some of them were fixed, and some were still there in the video. And it's like it's coming soon, which is like, are they going to address these issues, or is this going to feel like kind of like a last gen title, totally across the board? That's kind of my high level summary of my thoughts. I'm happy to dive in deeper, but before we do, what were your high level thoughts?
I mean, I thought like so. I mean, I watched the whole thing.
Yep.
Afterwards, everybody's like, "This is Microsoft. Like, finally, or this is Xbox. They're finally bringing the games." And although they showed a lot of games on display.
Yep.
What I find particularly weird about the whole thing is that they didn't show a whole lot, like
Yeah.
a whole lot of actual games, like gameplay. Um, and I think if you actually like break down the whole thing, you would probably see that there was a lot of cross-gen or or non-exclusive games that actually showed gameplay, and then the Xbox Studio titles, the majority of which didn't show any gameplay whatsoever. They showed videos or they showed pre-rendered like cinematics, that sort of thing. And in the two titles that that were actually the two titles that you really were expecting to see gameplay from, you didn't. It was Halo Infinite, which I'm really surprised they didn't show the single player campaign.
Yeah.
Um, Today they do have like a longer I guess they're showing off a lot more gameplay, but I still haven't seen anything about Halo single player, which is still due out this year. They showed the multiplayer stuff, but the multiplayer stuff has been in a playable state in like a closed beta for some time. So it's like, I mean, I expect this stuff to be playable. The game was supposed to be out last year, so presumably all this stuff is playable. They're
Yeah.
also splitting up the multiplayer and the single player campaign so that you can get the multiplayer campaign. Almost certainly will be releasing this year. The single player still leaves me very questionable whether or not they will. If they couldn't show gameplay at E3, it's like, well, you've got like 8 months left, or it's less than that, like 6 months left to the latest possible release day, and 3 of those months would be left to certain in production. So they've got 3 months left before that they're going to be trying to lock that game down. It is very bizarre to me. I don't get why they didn't show any gameplay. They didn't show anything from that. And then Starfield was another one which we know has been in development. It was announced in 2018. Um, I think everybody's expecting to see something, and they showed essentially graphics rendered in the engine, but that doesn't really mean a whole lot right now. It could be
No.
running on a PC. It could be, like all those things. We know it's going to PC. So I think
Right.
those are the weirdest things that stood out. So it's like, if you actually compress it down, like, yeah, there's a lot of good, great game announcements, but almost little was shown of actual games that you were expecting to see. And then you didn't get updates from things like Everwild, which now sounds to be being rebooted. Um, there was a bunch of stuff that Microsoft showed at their like first Xbox Series, you know, uh, uh, game showcase, I guess. Most of that stuff was not shown again. So it's just like, it's very, very weird. You're like, where are you actually at on the development? And then we had that weird surprise at the very end, which was like, by the way, here's Forza Horizon 5 and it looks great. And everybody's like, okay, well, that's what I was expecting from the other games.
Right.
But
Right. I mean, but they also ended on Redfall, which was like, why didn't you end on Horizon? Because that was amazing. Horizon looked great.
yeah, I mean, and it was like a genuine surprise. I think it was like the only thing that came out of that where it's just like, oh, I'm surprised to see a game that I knew was in development, but I didn't know
Or
at what
you,
stage.
you could clearly assume with Horizon 1, 2, 3, 4, they're probably working on a fifth. But then they come out and they're like,
The
here it
fifth was
is. And
well
you're like,
known
whoa.
prior to it. Like, it was well
Oh,
known,
was
but
it?
it
Okay.
was. But
Okay.
it was
I
like,
wasn't aware.
but I don't think anybody knew that the release date was imminent this year.
Right. Right.
So there's that. Uh,
Basically, it was like 27 out of 30 of those games at the very end of the trailer said coming to Game Pass day one, or at least coming to Game Pass, if not also Game Pass available simultaneously day one.
right. Like, I,
I
I
mean, that
mean,
was the big thing.
yeah, that's the big takeaway, is that this was more of a showing of like, look at these games
Yeah.
that come in this package that you should already be paying for. If you're an Xbox owner already, you should be paying for this. And by the time we roll out xCloud, this is going to be a huge value to anybody who's willing to spend the whatever, like $15-18 per month to get access to all these games. Um, and Microsoft is quick to like flaunt like what that means too. They had a whole, it wasn't part of the E3 presentation, but it was like part of some of their marketing and press releases, which was, people who own Game Pass play games they never thought they would play before. They're playing 40% more titles than people who are just playing disc games or downloaded own like fully owned games. So there's a lot of value, and I think they're going to further try to bolster their numbers, because the more Game Pass players they have on there, the more ability you have as a gamer, at least, to explore a bunch of titles that
Yeah.
you may never pick up because you wouldn't consider dropping $40 on Psychonauts 2 or something like that. But if it comes with the service, you might as well jump on it and play it.